Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Dreamcatcher podcast, a place where your dreams can find a voice. Animism is the belief that everything in the world, including people, plants, animals, and objects, and even dreams and ideas, have a soul or a spirit which animates them and makes them conscious. Animism is a key feature in ancient religions, especially of indigenous tribal cultures. It can also be identified in many different major world religions. To tell us more about this fascinating world, I invited Laura Giles. Laura is a licensed clinical social worker, spiritual mentor, speaker, and author. Her passion is helping people achieve their dreams and become empowered to solve their own problems. She is the founder of Pan Society, a spiritual community dedicated to embodying and expressing the oneness of all creation. Her animist heritage is infused in her retreats, pilgrimages, workshops, classes, rituals, and her whole life. In our conversation, Laura and I discussed the various facets of animism, including its origins, where it's still practiced today, and how we can incorporate it into our own spiritual practice to improve both our lives and the lives of others. If you like what you heard, please don't forget to like, rate, share, and subscribe to this podcast. Thanks. Hi, Laura. How are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
I am fantastic. It's just lovely to connect with you. And thank you so much for making the time to be here and tell us about the mystical world of animism. I'm really excited to hear more about it.
Well, thank you so much for asking me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah. I've been fascinated with animism for the longest time because I know it's a fundamental component of Native American traditions and beliefs.
Yeah.
And as you know, my blog is called The Dreamcatcher, which for those of you who don't know, the Dreamcatcher is this beautiful artifact that Native Americans use in their rituals. So yeah. Do you have American Indian roots by any chance?
I do.
Okay, great. And is that where you were exposed to this belief system?
Actually, no. So the Native Americans on my dad's side, and my dad was adopted, so we didn't know that side of the family until much later. But my mom is indigenous too, and that's where. So I grew up with it. I was born in it, and it was in the household. But I grew up in the West, so I didn't have a community of it, and didn't really know all that it could be until I visited that, and that was just a mind-blowing experience, and it changed my life being in a whole community of people like that.
And where did you find this community?
I'd rather not say, and here's why.
Okay.
So my mom's people I know it sounds kind of crazy, but my mom's people have very little impact from colonizers because they kept on the down low. They fought, and when I hear people talk about wanting to discover that, here in the West, we have lots of money. We can do whatever we want. So they find out, oh, here's a tribe, and I can get the authentic thing. They go there, and then it influences the culture.
Right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And my mom's people are really aware of that. And there's a lot of intention about who comes in, who doesn't come in, what we share, what we don't share. And it's not like it's a closed community, but we're proud of our history. We're proud of our traditions, and we don't want it to be a tourist attraction. We don't want it to be sold like that. So there's a lot of protection around that.
I totally understand. This is just me being nosy.
Oh, it's okay.
All right. So let's start out with the basics, Laura. What is animism? Tell us a bit about it. What is it about?
So it's funny that you asked because just recently my nephew was asking my dad about that, and I was there when it happened. And my dad is one of these people. He's a word guy. He studied Latin. He speaks Greek. And when we were little kids, we had this gigantic dictionary, and the game was Stump Daddy. So if you could find a word that he didn't know, then he'd give you candy. And we never did because he just knows all these words, but he'd give us candy anyway. But so I wanted to hear his answer because he has all of this knowledge, you know, and I wanted to hear how he would explain it. And for a second, he paused, which is not like him. He knows everything. He's one of those people, you know. And he put some real thought into it. And I was so glad that he answered the way that he did, because it's one of these things like the Tao that can be named is not the eternal Tao. Well, animism's like that too. So it's one of these words that, so this is what his explanation was. He said it's one of these words that an anthropologist made up to describe something that didn't exist in the West, because in animist cultures we don't have a word for that, because there's no, we don't have words for things that are outside of ourselves. You know, how do you describe something that's everything? You can't really do that. It's there's no need to. It's within you. It's everywhere. So animism really is this idea that everything is you. You're everything. Everything is sacred. Everything is alive. It's really an idea of oneness in all things. And it's more than that, actually. It's the practice of that. So how do you move in the world with that knowing? That's what animism is. And how do you talk about that in words? It's really hard, really.
Yeah, I understand that. My first exposure to it was when I watched Pocahontas, Colors of the Wind.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with that song? That part where she
Mm-hmm.
says, every rock, every tree has a spirit, has a name, something
Exactly.
like that. And I think I was around 12 when I first watched it, and I'm like, what is she talking about? Like, but I mean, then later on, I figured out, and I know that was referring to, alluding to beliefs around animism. So yeah,
Yes.
thank you for explaining that. And what drew you to animism? Well, you said you were born with it.
Yeah. So yeah, it was just always a part of everything. It's kind of the thread that runs through everything. So it wasn't like we were different than other people. We kind of were, but we really weren't. Because it's more of an internal thing, and you don't go around saying, like, for example, I don't have to announce that I'm human. I don't have to announce that I'm a female, because you can look at me and see that. So it's the kind of thing that, you know, people wouldn't really know unless something popped out. You know, if they saw you doing a ritual or they saw you doing something that was unusual, because it's really more of an internal thing that gets expressed externally. You just wouldn't know by looking at people.
What is animism like? How has it made your life better?
So my work is as a trauma therapist, and my answer might be skewed by that, because I see a lot of people with problems. But I haven't had a lot of problems that people in the West have, and I attribute that to animism. And I know that all of these things are like normal human things, but I've never felt grief because I have a relationship with the spirit world. And so I know that they're not here, but they're here, the people who die. I've never felt loneliness, because how can you be lonely if you're connected to every little thing, to the wind, to the rocks, to the trees, to the, you know, when you have that knowing inside of you, there's nothing that's not you. You're never alone. You're always well supported. So a lot of these emotional issues that people have, I really haven't had them.
Yeah, because loneliness is a major problem.
For sure. It's epidemic.
And I think the quarantine, social distancing this year only made it worse.
For sure. Yeah.
And where did animism originate? Because I've heard that it's one of the oldest human religions. Like literally the caveman, like it goes as you know, as far back as those times, you know. So
yeah, there's evidence of that from cave paintings and things like that. I mean, nobody really knows, but if you look at the Australian Aboriginals, they say that that's the oldest people, and that's 40,000 years that we know of, and they've certainly been animists that long. So I don't know. It's definitely older than anything else we can trace.
Yeah, and is it still practiced in certain parts of the world right now?
Oh, for sure. Lots and lots and lots of places. I think lots of Westerners don't understand that, but it's in tons of places. And I think a lot of Westerners don't understand it's in Europe as well. They think of this like something that belongs to tribal Africa or just to Native Americans, but it's everywhere. It's everywhere.
I know in Scandinavia, they have some people who practice out there.
Yeah.
Some of the
It's
indigenous,
rare.
the Samis,
Yeah.
or yeah.
hmm Yeah.
Okay. All right. And you say that people, when they see you doing rituals, most of them are curious. But have you ever come across people who are skeptical and who are like, "Oh, this is all woo-woo, what you're doing, it's awesome tree hugging stuff." It's like for skeptics like them, what do you say?
Nothing really. That's it's all good. Everybody can do whatever they want. I don't really defend it. I mean, if they're curious, I'll give them, well, we can talk. You got questions for sure, but whatever. It doesn't really, I don't care.
No, so it doesn't bother you at all.
No. Mm-mm. I mean, there's things that I look at and I'm thinking, move, and it's none of my business. I don't criticize them. It's just something I don't relate to. So everybody can think and do whatever they want.
Well, how would you explain it to them if someone is willing to listen, but they're on
hmm
the fence? What would
hmm
you say?
Um, I would say that it's a bit like love. I think love is the foundation of animism. It's the life force that makes everything alive and connected. And we can't really talk about that. We can't explain that. We can't put that in a box. And love has many faces. How do you talk about that? It's really the same thing. When you talk about spirit, everybody has their own expression of it. And if yours doesn't look like mine, that's cool. But I see that divinity in everything. It makes everything more alive. And more than that, it's an experience of that. So when you talked about tree hugging, when you go into a place where the trees are alive, it's like they're breathing and you can feel them and it's almost like they glow. Or if you're by a bonfire and the fire is doing that, or the stars are doing that, and it's like you're all breathing the same breath. And there's nothing that I can do to make you feel that or to know that. It's just an experience that you have. And once you have it, you know it.
Yeah. So it's feeling the sense of connectedness,
Yes,
and that is a very personal experience.
exactly. Yeah. And it can happen in anything. You could be swimming and, or you're surfing, for example, and you're just bobbing on the water and then it just hits you.
Mm.
It could happen with anything. It can happen with a person in a conversation. It can happen during sex, taking a shower, driving down the street. It can happen anywhere because everything's alive. So that opportunity is always there if you're present with it. And I think that's one of the things we lack in our society is we're not particularly present with anything. So how are you going to have that experience?
And I know you said you don't like to use a word to describe this connectedness, this energy that you feel. But if you could describe it, what would you say?
Hmm.
What words would you use?
It's so hard to have words. And maybe this is why, because I think in the West we try to put everything into words and make it a left brain experience that other people can understand and we could reproduce and convey. But if you look at a view, for example, you're at the top of the mountain, you're looking down, and you get this thing that just makes you gasp. I
Mm,
can't give that to you. And your experience of it is going to be different than mine, and it's just a reflection of your energy and the way that you're connecting with the view, and it's like that. I mean, we can all feel it, but it's going to be a different experience. So for example, one time pre-COVID, I used to take people on sacred travel journeys, and we would go to these different places, and we went to St. Michael's Mount in Cornwall. It is the most magnificent place. We just walked in and it was just radiating with all of this energy. I mean, from centuries, of people who loved there, worshiped there, prayed there. And it is one of these places. This doesn't happen a lot, so it might sound a bit woo-woo, but it's a pretty spectacular experience. But it literally brought me to my knees. I was just sobbing with so much love. It was just bursting from the stones. And that's what I'm talking about. You just had to be there to experience it, because I can talk about it. I am talking about it, but unless you've had something similar, you're just not going to grasp it. It's going to sound like blah, blah, blah. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I totally get that. You know, when I experienced it, we had taken a cruise around Iceland, and we were in the fjords. And there was a major part of the journey when we were transitioning from the Atlantic Ocean and we were getting into Iceland. We were covered by mist and fog, and we couldn't see anything. We were totally enveloped in it. And during that time, I felt like I was in this sort of portal of nothingness. It felt eerie, but it felt magnificent at the same time. So I can understand. I can understand, and I think it's a lovely feeling. I think the only way to get there is by really being tuned in, and really
Yes.
being present, as you mentioned
Yes.
earlier. You got to be present
Hmm.
and really be able to witness what you see.
Right. Yeah. It's not something anybody can give you. You can't read it in a book. It's all your own. It's just available to you. You just have to get it. Go get it.
Yeah, absolutely. And what are some of the common practices that you have in animism?
It varies from culture to culture. Um, Their rites of passage are pretty common. So it's taking you from one stage of life to the next. So that's another thing that because we have rites of passage, I think a lot of people, especially millennials,
That would
don't know
be
who they are and where they are.
We're not all
Because
that
you don't
bad, Laura.
know, but because there's no rites of passage, there's a lot of people who don't know where they are and who they are.
That's
So when
true.
you have rites of passage,
Yeah.
you know I'm an adult now. You know I'm married now. You know I'm an elder now. That's very distinctive. You close one door, you open another. So that's one thing that we have in common. Um, Usually, most have a way of honoring the ancestors. That's also really common. Funerals. I mean, we have them here too, but it's a different type of event because death is a liminal space, a doorway to another realm, and that needs to be a lot of stuff happens there, purification and letting go, and a ton of different things that need to happen so that the ancestors pass well and can serve the living in a good way. So those are some of the common ones, and then there's like little ones that are common to your family maybe or to your village. um, so depending upon what crops you have, there might be certain rituals you do for like corn or rice or whatever your crops are. Um, if you have weather patterns or weather things that happen, there might be weather rituals. It really just depends on your geography and how you live your daily life because it's very connected to the rhythm of nature.
Okay. So nature and the geography around you dictates what kind of rituals you do.
Yeah. Hmm.
Okay. And can anyone practice these rituals, like, because I know animism is not really a religion, or is it? It's not, right?
It depends on how you practice it. For some people, it's a philosophy. For some, it's a spiritual path. Some call it a religion. We don't really split hairs like that. We don't care what you call it, how you do it.
Okay, so you could be, say, a Buddhist and have some animism rituals and practices that you do.
Yeah. So, for example, I know that there's a lot of people who call themselves Christian animists or atheist animists. So we don't really. Yeah, I know that's surprising, right? So it
Atheist
doesn't have to anything.
animist? That's
Yeah, yeah,
other end of the spectrum. It's like, which one?
yeah. I think it works for everybody.
Works for everyone. Okay. And do you have any tips on how they can incorporate it into their existing spiritual practice? Like what how do you have some
I
ideas on?
think if a person practices mindfulness, it will naturally begin to evolve in sort of an animist practice because you just become more sensitive and aware of what's going on around you. And I think we're all good, and we want to honor the energies of things that are around us and be grateful and just open your heart to it. I think animism is really the foundation, and you'll just gravitate towards it. it's like little kids, you know, before you're taught anything, they're already animists. They know how to use their imagination. They know how to speak to spirits. Spirits speak to them very easily. They, it's just in them. They honor nature and until they're taught not to. And so it really, I think, is a way, mindfulness is a way to bring us back to what we already intuitively know.
Which is that
everything is alive and sacred.
Consciousness.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's kind of hard to do, Laura, especially the way we've been educated. You know, we're more rational minded, and we're told to trust science. So I think getting to that level of consciousness is it takes concerted effort.
I don't think it has to, because so we have that left brain way of thinking, but if we're going to be whole people, we need to engage with the right brain too. So it's not an either or thing; it's a both.
But it's a weaker muscle. It's a weaker muscle. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, for sure, for sure. Yeah. So, but it's accessible through play and imagination, and everybody has that. It's free.
It's free, and those practices really help in exercise.
Oh, for sure. Yes, yes.
Okay, and for someone who's curious about animism, like what would you suggest? And like, what are some of the things they can start with?
So I am the founder of Pan Society, which is an organization to make animism more accessible to the Western person. And we're at pansociety.net, pansociety.org. We have tons of stuff on YouTube. I would start there.
Okay. So you have a lot of resources there and links, which can...
Tons.
Yeah, I know you have a pretty good, pretty well archived YouTube channel. So yeah, people can definitely check that out. Okay, Laura, one last question. Why do you think it's important for people to believe that everything in the world is conscious and alive?
Well, if you think about karma means action. And you can't have action without consequences. So that's the yin and the yang again. So we live in a complementary dualistic universe, meaning that yin and yang is always in play. So complementary versus antagonistic. So it's not a good and bad, it's just balanced. And if you think about all the things that you do and are mindful about that, then what you want to send out, I hope, is positive, so that boomerangs around the world in a positive way. So it really is self-serving to practice animism, because you're going to be thinking about the consequences of what you're doing and how it ripples out into the world. So not just, we do think about me, but we also think about we. So if I am doing something that's short-sighted and selfish, that's going to boomerang back to me. If I'm doing something for the good of all, that's also going to boomerang back to me, and then everybody benefits. So if you want to go self-interest, I would say do it for that reason.
Yeah. And your perspective, it also extends to other people, right? People who are different from us, from different cultures, different races.
Oh, right. Sure. Yeah, there's a place for everybody. Everything that's existing exists for a reason. So you want to be careful about who you exclude, because that comes back to you too. You know, maybe you have something that I need, and if I'm excluding you, now I don't have access to it. So it really is a big picture, small picture. Everything is yin and yang. It just makes your perspective so different. And I think it makes you much more thoughtful and much more kind, because what you do comes back to you.
Okay. And what specific belief systems do that guides us when it comes to treating everyone as an equal? Like what? Tell us more about that. I'm curious to know, what are the specific animism precepts that talk about this?
Well, that's interesting you asked that, because we don't have a holy book. We don't have dogma. We don't have rules. We don't have a 10 commandment, because everything is sacred. If everything is sacred, then you can do whatever you want and still be sacred. So if you think about, if I I don't encourage anybody to do this, but let's say that I do something negative and nasty to you, okay? And then obviously you get the benefit of that, but I get the benefit of learning from that. So we can't have, there's no love and light, no total love and light. You know, the darkness needs the light. They're partners. So in doing that bad thing, I have the opportunity to grow. You have the opportunity to grow. So you have the opportunity to forgive me, to maybe there's something in it for you. And in that way we can both grow. So if we accept everything that happens as a gift, we have a beautiful life. I can go around complaining about stuff and moaning and groaning, oh, it's too hot, it's too cold, it's this, that. And I'm not going to have a great life. But if everything is for us and everything is sacred, no matter what happens, it's all good. That's how I truly believe. I mean, I don't think everything's pleasant. I don't want everything that happens. But as soon as I turn that switch on and say, how can this benefit me? You know, or if something is really good and I'm like, okay, this is going to be temporary, because everything is. Spring only lasts for a while. Summer only lasts for a while. Winter, everything only lasts for a while. Then it makes me cherish it more. Even if it's something that I don't like. I don't have a lot of badness in my life, so I'm like super positive. So when something negative happens, it's like, ooh, you know, oh, I get to be sad for a while. And that's like, I know it's kind of crazy. People don't say that kind of thing, but it's novel. And so I do welcome everything that comes, because it's only going to be here for a little while. I'm only going to be here for a little while.
Okay. So that sense of the transient nature of everything that
Yes.
happens in life.
Yes.
That's,
it keeps you from holding on and grasping, you know?
yes.
I see a lot of people, it's like, oh, I want this relationship to last forever. It's your first date, you know? Your relationship's not going to last. This one might not, the next one might not. Nothing lasts forever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if it's good now, great. I'm good. I hope it'll be good tomorrow, but if it's not, it's okay.
Right. That's it's a good way to live. It's very it's good for your mental health, emotional health.
It's natural. Nature's the teacher.
Natural, because what gets in the way is our mind and our monkey mind, you know? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But if we just connect to the natural forces around us, it's all good.
It's all good. It's all good.
It's all good. Okay, Laura, thank you so much. That was terrific. I really appreciate all your insights that you shared with us today. I've certainly learned a lot. So people can learn more about you at pansociety.org, correct?
Mm-hmm. We have pansociety.net and pansociety.org. So one of them is more for learning about details and bringing it into your life, and the other one's more the inspirational or spiritual side of it.
Okay. Great. Yeah, that's a good starting point for anyone who's curious about animism, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, yep. Perfect. All right. Laura, it's been terrific. It's been great talking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.